the employee didn't trust or have any respect for their boss. So that tells me that a person doesn't quit an organization. A person quits their boss. They give up on their boss. So that tells me that leadership does matter. It matters for us as individuals, and it matters for our organization. Now, interesting enough, the second reason people leave their organization, so first reason is the relationship with their boss. Second reason is the relationship with their peers. So again, the environment in which we work and play is very important to us. So if we don't have a good relationship with our boss, we don't trust and respect them, we don't have a good relationship with our peers, do you want to get up every day and go to school or work? I sure don't. So I say leadership does matter a whole lot. So let's look at why leadership matters. Oh, I guess I probably need to introduce myself, don't I? A little bit about me. Much of it has already been explained, but I spent almost 30 years working in the human resource industry. And a good day to me was when less than 50% of the employees were upset with me. Because in human resources, we deal with a lot of sensitive issues, a lot of emotional issues. We get blamed for a lot of things. So I always thought a good day was when less than half of the people in the company were upset with me. Well, I learned a lot in human resources about leadership. And I spend a lot of my time now coaching and mentoring new supervisors and leaders on some of the values and attributes and skills we're going to talk about today. But after 30 years or 27 years in industry working for private, public, and nonprofit organizations in the US, I decided I wanted to do something I was passionate about. What's the saying that if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life? Well, I haven't worked for the last 5 years. Because 5 years ago, I joined Peregrine. And what I do every day is what I am passionate about. I'm passionate about helping you be the best person you can be, about challenging you to think of things differently, and to acknowledge some of the skills you have in you, but maybe think about ways to use them differently. So let's talk a little bit about some of those skills. The first thing I need to do is define leadership, because leadership and management are two different focuses. Sorry, I have to look over my shoulder here. I'll try and look at my slide over here. Leadership is focused on people. It's on communicating a vision. It's on communicating. It's on mentoring. It's on inspiring people to want to do what you need them to do. Management, on the other hand, is really focused on processes, efficiencies, making progress in the workplace. It's on structures. It's on predictability. Now, we need both management and leadership in the workplace, but I need you to understand what I'm talking about as we talk more about leadership. I'm really talking about that inspirational piece, the piece that's focused on the people, not on the systems or the structure or the processes. So that's the focus that we're going to talk about today. There was a U.S. Navy admiral. She was the first two-star admiral in the U.S. Navy, and her name was Dr. Grace Murray, or Hopper, excuse me, Murray Hopper. Dr. Hopper was a computer scientist, so she spent her days in a very technical field, and not one that's known for great leadership, not back 30 or 40 years ago. But she said, you lead people, you manage things. And I think that's a really good quote for us to think about as we go forward. We lead people, we manage things. Now, there are a couple of definitions of leadership that are quite lengthy, and I'm going to just put them up here so you can look at them while I'm talking about them. The Academy of Management talks about leadership in the way of wanting to understand and agree what needs to be done and motivating people to do what needs to be done. The second one is actually the U.S. Department of Defense's definition. And again, it talks about providing a purpose, providing vision for people so they know what they need to do and they can go forward and do it. But I want to propose a couple of very simple thoughts on leadership. The first one comes from Ken Blanchard. Now, all three of these people that I'm going to quote, actually, four of the people I'm going to quote, are all leadership experts. For the last 20 or 30 years, they've been studying leadership, global leadership. And Ken Blanchard said that leadership is really just about getting the herd to move roughly west. It's providing them direction and getting them moving. The next one, Kaz and Poshner wrote books on leadership, and they said that leadership is the relationship between those who aspire to lead and those who choose to follow. Well, in leadership, knowing when to follow is just as important as knowing when to lead, because you can't be out front and center all the time. There will be people that you should choose to defer to. No leader knows everything, and good leaders, smart leaders, surround themselves with really intelligent people who like to work in a team environment so that you can hand off leadership back and forth. I saw that this morning in meeting with some of the leaders of your organization here. One person doesn't take the lead all the time. They defer to each other based on what the need is, what's the situation, who has the greatest expertise. That's a good sign of leaders. They don't let their ego get involved. Knowing when to follow is very important as a leader. The last quote I want to share with you is from a gentleman named John Maxwell. And he said leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. It's all about influence, influencing others' behavior. Now, Mr. Maxwell also said that the leader is the person in the room who has the most influence, which every time you gather a group of people in a room, that means your leader's going to change. So who carries the most influence is the leader. Now, is that always going to be the person that has the largest job title? No. In fact, sometimes it might be the person whose job seems most unimportant, but they have the informal influence that gets things done. So, to kind of summarize leadership and management, they are two different hats, the same person. They're not mutually exclusive. We need to know which hat to put on. Some days we'll be working our management hat. Some days we'll put on our leadership hat. Some days we're wearing both back and forth, and you need to know when to change. A good manager isn't always a good leader, but more than likely, a good leader is probably a good manager also. So as you're working through your degree and you're learning all these new skills and characteristics of management, I want you to think about, from the leadership perspective, how do you implement those things? Because that's what's going to make you a great leader. The knowledge you have is going to make you a great manager. How you implement that knowledge is what makes you a great leader. Now, the last point I think is one worth bearing, and that is to be a leader. If we go back to John Maxwell's definition, it's someone who has influence. You all have influence, right? You influence your brothers and sisters, you influence your friends, you influence your neighbors, you influence your team here at school. So you all have influence, that makes you a leader, right? You really don't have to have a position, a formal position of supervision to be a leader. You're all a leader already. How you choose to develop those leadership skills may get you into that position of a title of leader quickly, or it may not. But don't ever doubt that you have influence and what you say matters to other people, because it does. So think of yourself as a leader starting today. Leadership is a journey. It is not an end destination. We don't ever arrive. You know, I can't wake up tomorrow and say, I'm done. I am a leader. I made it. I can sit back and just enjoy. Because you can't. It's a continuous journey. The world is changing around us. You know that better than I do. You experience it every day. The influence of countries all over the world. We can't ignore it. So if we stop learning, we're falling behind. If we stop growing as an individual, as a person, we can't expect to compete in this world today. So I want you to think of leadership as a journey. You're going to get a degree when you leave here, and your formal education will end. But your journey as a leader will not end. It will continue day after day. So keep remembering that I need to learn something every day. If you go to bed at the end of the day and you've not learned something, it's a wasted day. So from a leadership perspective, grow every day. Find something to learn about every day. Find a new way to think of something every day. It is that continuous improvement that we talk about in the workplace, that we strive for in how we do business. Same concept applies with leadership. I want to talk to you about 14 different attributes, values that great leaders hold. And in doing this, I'm going to give you a name of a leader. Hopefully you'll know most of them. And it's a person who I think really demonstrates that behavior beautifully. They may not be an overall wonderful leader, but I want you to think about that person from just the aspect that I'm going to share with you. Because leaders are made by our daily actions. You don't develop leadership in a day. It's based on your daily actions. You know, we said it's a journey, and leaders are made. Yes, some leaders may come with characteristics that make them better leaders sooner, if that makes sense. So some of us may have learned some of these traits earlier in life, and so we may have developed our leadership as young children, as teenagers, as young adults. Some of us may not learn some of these traits until we're in our 30s, or our 40s, or our 50s, or our 60s, and that's okay, because you'll find you have strengths in these 14 characteristics, and you'll find you have weaknesses in these 14 characteristics. And I'd like to ask you to focus on the strengths. Where do you see your strengths in these? So let's start with this. The first one is integrity. I purposely put integrity number 1. The other 13 are not in any particular order, but integrity is 1, because if a leader does not have integrity, you don't get a second chance to prove yourself. If you fail at this one, you're going to have to leave your organization and go somewhere else, because your team will not give you a second chance. So to me, integrity really is the biggest piece. Now, integrity is the quality of honesty, trustworthy, respect, high moral principles. That's what I mean when we're talking about integrity. Let's look at things that build integrity or things that don't build integrity. So you can practice integrity by telling the truth all the time. Not when it's convenient, not when it's only going to benefit you, but all the time. Tell the truth. Not your version of the truth, the truth. Stand for what you believe, even if you're going to have to take some flack. If it's a value you hold dearly, if it's something you really believe is right, then it's your responsibility to stand up for it. Don't worry about if someone's not going to like you or disagree with you. That's part of life. That's part of being human beings. We're going to have conflict and disagreements. We just need to learn how to deal with them. So holding on to what you believe is a great way of demonstrating integrity. Use your power for the organization's good, not your own good. Someone who demonstrates integrity in the workplace or in the classroom is someone who's thinking beyond themselves. They're thinking not what's in it for me. They're thinking, how does this benefit the larger group? How does this benefit the organization? How does this benefit my culture? How does this benefit the world? And that's what they're looking for. And the last point is to accept when you don't have all the answers. That's difficult for us, for many of us. When someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer, the hardest words are, I don't know. But I'll find out and get back to you later. but the I don't know is really difficult for us. But great leaders who strive to demonstrate integrity, it's easy for them to say, I don't know, I'll get back to you later. Or let's ask someone else who does know. So know your weaknesses and find ways to compensate for that. So when you are asked questions, you know where to go to get the information. You know who does have the answers. That's a way to practice integrity. Number 2, now again, the rest of these are in no order, is knowledge. Great leaders have knowledge about their organization and about how their organization impacts the bigger environment in which they work. So my example here is the founders of Google. Google has a rule, and it's the 70-30-10 rule. And basically, what it means is that a certain period of time you're going to be working, a certain period of time you're going to be thinking about things, and a certain period of time you're going to be doing nothing. Because as we all know, some of the inspirations and innovations come to us when we're not thinking about anything. When you're in the shower in the morning, when you're taking a walk or riding the bicycle or whatever you do for relaxation, that's when those aha moments can happen, when you're not thinking about it. They understood this, and they also understood how their business fit into the world. These guys knew what we wanted before we knew what we wanted. You know, to develop the search engine that they did and to maintain it for all the years that they have, it's just amazing. We'll talk more when we talk about athletes, but once you get to the top, it's harder to stay at the top than it is to get to the top. Knowledge plays a big piece in that. So when we're talking about knowledge, it's gaining the respect and confidence by having people, your team, know you know. You don't have to know their job. You don't have to be able to do their job, but you have to understand what their responsibilities are and how it interplays with the rest of the organization. That's what we mean by knowledge. Some ways to develop knowledge are to ask questions. Ask open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are questions that cannot be answered with a yes or a no. It requires some information to be given. So ask questions, and I would challenge you from today forward, always ask questions that are open-ended questions. Who, what, when, where, why, how? Those are the questions you should be thinking about, because that's what will give you the knowledge that you need. Focus on substandard performance, yours as well as those that you work with. Now, we're not going to talk about performance issues, but we all know that some people work harder than others. And sometimes you're in a team and you're feeling like you're pulling all the weight and your partner over here is kind of just sliding on your coattails. They're just letting you do all the work. When that happens, it's your responsibility to call them on the carpet, to say to them, let's talk about how you're contributing here, because I'm not happy with it. And having the knowledge to do that and the courage to do that is really important as a leader. Show your team members by your actions that you understand and care for them. That's also very important, that you understand their struggles. That's another piece of knowledge. The third one is courage. Courage is the quality that acknowledges fear, but you move beyond it. It allows you to continue going forward and not get stifled by the fear of the unknown or the fear of what might happen. So courage is that ability to keep moving forward. My example, Richard Phillips, many of you might have seen the movie Captain Phillips. This is the gentleman who was the captain of a cargo ship that was hijacked, I guess is the word, by pirates. This gentleman said, "Take me."